My grandmother never panicked once in her entire life. Not when the landlord raised rent without warning. Not when my grandfather came home one Tuesday and said the factory had let him go. Not when groceries cost 30% more in October than they had in July. She would just sit down at the kitchen table, pull out a small, worn notebook, and start writing numbers in her careful handwriting. Calm, quiet, completely unbothered.
I asked her once how she never seemed scared about money. She looked up from the notebook and said something I did not understand until I was much older. "Baby, I learned how to live from people who had nothing. You cannot frighten someone who already knows how to survive on almost zero."
She was talking about her own mother, a woman who raised 5 children through the Great Depression, with no government check, no credit card, and no financial advisor telling her what to do. Just 25 rules, practiced daily, without exception. Those rules kept her family fed, housed, and debt-free through the worst economic collapse in American history. Nobody taught you these rules. There is a very specific reason for that.
Rule 1. Nobody talks about what actually killed families during the Depression. And it was not the stock market crash. It was the moment they realized they had no cash reserves when everything stopped. Depression survivors learned one rule above everything else. Keep physical cash at home, always, in an amount that covers at least 2 weeks of essential expenses. Not in a bank, not in an account, in your hand. Between 1930 and 1933, over 9,000 American banks failed. Depositors lost everything overnight. The families who survived intact were the ones who never trusted a single institution with every dollar they had. In 2026, your money is FDIC insured, but insurance takes time, and emergencies do not wait. Start a physical cash reserve this week. Even $50 hidden safely at home is a foundation. Build from there. The bank does not need to know about it. That is the point. Build from there. The bank does not need to know about it. That is the point.
Rule 2. Here is the thing about debt that the 1930s generation understood at a cellular level. It is not just a financial problem. It is a freedom problem. Every dollar you owe someone is a dollar that controls your decisions. Depression families treated debt the way they treated illness, something to be avoided entirely and eliminated immediately if contracted. They did not borrow for furniture. They did not finance appliances. They did not carry balances. If the money was not in hand, the purchase did not happen. Full stop. Consumer debt in America today exceeds $17 trillion. The Depression generation carried essentially zero, not because they wanted less, but because they understood that owing money meant someone else owned a piece of every future paycheck. That ownership is exactly what makes financial crisis survivable or unsurvivable when income suddenly disappears.
This one sounds almost insultingly simple, and that is exactly why it works. Depression families saved before they spent, not what was left after spending. Before. The paycheck arrived, and the first money out went into savings. Rent came second. Everything optional came last, if it came at all. Modern financial advice says the same thing. Pay yourself first. But the phrase has been repeated so often without context that it lost its power. The Depression generation did not need a slogan. They had the memory of watching their neighbors lose everything because there was nothing saved behind them when crisis hit. $1 saved before spending this week becomes the foundation. The amount is not the point. The order is everything. Reverse the sequence. Keep it reversed. That single change separates people who survive financial shocks from people who are destroyed by them.
Most people have never heard this rule, and it shows in their grocery bills every single month. Depression mothers kept a price book, a small notebook in their purse where they recorded the cost of every staple item at every store they visited. Flour at one shop, sugar at another, lard at the butcher. Over weeks, patterns emerged. Which store was cheapest for which item, on which day of the week? Shopping became strategic rather than convenient.
A woman tracking prices carefully could save 15 to 20% on groceries without cutting a single item from the list, simply by buying each thing where it costs the least. The notebook cost almost nothing. The savings paid for themselves in a single trip. Your phone can do this today in a Notes app. Most people never bother. The ones who do consistently spend less without eating less.
Nobody wants to hear this one. But the families who ignored it paid for that comfort in ways they spent years recovering from. Depression survivors never bought anything on impulse. Every purchase was planned days in advance, discussed between spouses, weighed against alternatives, and agreed upon before a single dollar left the house. Children did not get coins for candy. Wives did not browse stores without a specific list. Husbands did not wander hardware aisles looking around. Every unplanned purchase was money stolen from something that already had a claim on it. Modern retail science exists entirely to break this discipline. Store layouts, checkout displays, limited-time offers, algorithm-driven advertising. Every strategy is designed to manufacture a desire that did not exist when you woke up that morning. The Depression generation was immune because they never walked in without a plan. You can be too. This is the rule banks specifically do not want you practicing, and the reason is embarrassingly obvious once you see it. Depression families negotiated everything: rent, grocery prices, medical bills, utility payments, repair costs. Fixed pricing is a modern invention designed to remove your leverage from every transaction. In 1932, almost nothing had a price that could not be discussed. A tenant who offered to paint the hallway got a month's rent reduced. A customer who bought damaged goods got a lower price. A patient who paid cash on the same day got a reduced medical bill. This was not aggression. It was cooperation between people who were all struggling. Every price you see today is a starting point, not a final answer. Medical bills can be negotiated down. Rent can be discussed. Credit card interest rates can be lowered with a single phone call. The Depression generation knew this because they had no choice but to ask. You do too.
What if the single most powerful financial tool available to you costs absolutely nothing and takes 10 seconds a day? Depression families tracked every penny, not monthly, not weekly, daily. A small notebook, updated every evening, recording what came in and what went out. Not for analysis, not for optimization, simply for awareness. The act of writing "spent $8.50 on lunch" in your own handwriting produces a fundamentally different emotional response than watching a number change on a banking app. It forces a moment of honest accounting that modern financial technology has systematically removed from daily life, because aware consumers spend less, and less spending is bad for the financial industry. People who tracked daily in the 1930s knew within moments whether a purchase was a choice or an accident. Most modern spending is accidents. The notebook ends that.
This one has been called dangerous by the financial industry, not because it fails, but because it works too completely. Depression families paid cash for everything. Physical currency, handed over, felt leaving the hand. This is not nostalgia. This is neuroscience. Studies confirm that cash purchases activate mild pain responses in the brain that card purchases completely bypass. That pain is not a problem. It is protection. When spending hurts slightly, you spend less carelessly. You pause. You calculate. You ask whether this is worth what it costs somewhere else in your budget. The credit card removed that protection deliberately. The tap to pay feature removed it further. The buy now, pay later option removed it entirely. Put cash in envelopes for 1 month. Spend only what is in the envelope for each category. The results will surprise you in ways that no budgeting app ever has.
Here is what happened to families who skipped this rule, and it is not a comfortable story. Depression survivors maintained their belongings with an intensity modern consumers would find almost obsessive. Shoes went to the cobbler when the sole wore thin. Clothing got patched, darned, let out its seams, and passed to younger siblings. Appliances got repaired by whoever in the neighborhood had the skill. Furniture got reupholstered rather than replaced. A pair of work trousers in 1934 cost nearly a full day's wage. Nobody threw them away because the knees wore through. The average American now spends over $1,700 annually on clothing, much of it replacing items that could have been repaired for a few dollars in 30 minutes. The repair economy has nearly disappeared because it is catastrophically bad for retail sales. Fix what you have. Buy only what cannot be fixed. That gap is where significant money quietly hides. Most people have an emergency fund they plan to build someday. Depression families had one they built first, before any optional was considered. They called it the rainy day fund. The method was non-negotiable. A fixed small amount disappeared into savings every single week before any discretionary spending was permitted. Not invested, not deposited somewhere requiring a trip downtown to access. Hidden, physical, available, and protected from impulse by a clear and serious rule about what constituted a genuine emergency. A new coat on sale was not an emergency. A broken furnace in January was. That distinction, rigorously maintained, is the entire mechanism. Most modern emergency funds fail, not because people do not save enough, but because the definition of emergency expands to fill whatever is available. Keep the definition narrow. Keep the fund growing. The crisis it prepares you for will arrive without warning and without apology.
This rule kept entire communities alive when cash disappeared, and it is making a quiet comeback that most financial media has not noticed yet. When the Depression drained money from local economies, families turned to direct exchange. A plumber fixed a farmer's pipes for a side of bacon. A seamstress altered clothes for the doctor's wife in exchange for her children's checkups. A carpenter built a widow's henhouse and received eggs every Saturday for 2 years. No bank sat between them. No transaction fee was collected. No interest accumulated. The barter economy terrified financial institutions because it proved communities could function without them entirely. In 2026, skill exchange networks exist in almost every city. Time banks, local exchange platforms, neighborhood skill swaps. Trading what you know for what you need is not primitive, it is sophisticated and completely invisible to every system that profits from your transactions.
Rule 12. Nobody teaches this in school. Nobody puts it in personal finance books. And the people who profit from your grocery bill are counting on you never figuring it out. Depression families pooled purchasing power. Groups of 8 to 12 neighbors combined orders and bought staples, flour, sugar, dried beans, cornmeal, directly from wholesalers at a fraction of retail cost. One family had the truck, another had the storage space. Everyone contributed their share and split the savings. A 100-pound sack of flour cost dramatically less per pound than buying small bags at the grocery store. The difference, across a year, was enough to matter profoundly on a tight budget. Costco operates on this exact principle today and charges $65 annually for the privilege. Depression families did it with a handshake and a shared truck bed. Find 2 or 3 neighbors willing to bulk buy together. The savings are immediate and significant.
This one is so counterintuitive that most people argue against it before they try it, and then cannot believe the results when they do. Depression families grew food, not as a hobby, not as a lifestyle choice, as a financial strategy that could cut grocery costs by 1/3 or more across a growing season. A $2 investment in seeds in 1933 produced $50 worth of vegetables by September. Tomatoes, beans, squash, and greens grew in every available patch of dirt. Backyards, empty lots, window boxes, rooftop containers. Canning extended the harvest into winter. A single row of green beans could fill 30 jars. Those jars lined cellar shelves like a wall of insurance against months when work disappeared. A container garden on an apartment balcony today produces real food at almost no cost. The modern grocery industry spends billions convincing you that growing food is a quaint hobby. During hard times, it is a budget strategy.
This one is so counterintuitive that most people argue against it before they try it, and then cannot believe the results when they do. Depression families grew food, not as a hobby, not as a lifestyle choice, as a financial strategy that could cut grocery costs by a third or more across a growing season. A $2 investment in seeds in 1933 produced $50 worth of vegetables by September. Tomatoes, beans, squash, and greens grew in every available patch of dirt: backyards, empty lots, window boxes, rooftop containers. Canning extended the harvest into winter. A single row of green beans could fill 30 jars. Those jars lined cellar shelves like a wall of insurance against months when work disappeared. A container garden on an apartment balcony today produces real food at almost no cost. The modern grocery industry spends billions convincing you that growing food is a quaint hobby. During hard times, it is a budget strategy.
The financial industry spent decades making this feel old-fashioned. That alone should tell you everything about how well it works. Depression families used Layaway for every significant purchase. Pick the item, leave a deposit, make weekly payments, take it home only when fully paid. No interest, no credit check, no debt. A mother could put a winter coat on Layaway in August, pay small amounts each week, and collect it in November, owing nothing to anyone. The store got a guaranteed sale. The family got the item without borrowing. The only loser was the lender, who made nothing from the arrangement. Credit cards killed layaway programs in the 1970s and 1980s because credit purchases generated fees and interest that Layaway never did. Some retailers still offer Layaway. More importantly, you can create your own: a dedicated savings envelope or account for any planned purchase, funded weekly until the full amount is there. Buy it when you can afford it, not before.
This one saved more families from complete financial collapse than any government program ever did, and it required nothing but a conversation. When money became impossibly tight, Depression families did not suffer silently or reach for debt. They talked to the people they owed money to. Landlords heard from tenants before the rent due date, not after. Grocers who extended store credit heard from customers before the account ran dry. Doctors received honest conversations about what could be paid and when. Transparency preserved relationships that credit-based systems destroy through default in collection. A landlord who hears from a good tenant 2 weeks early can often wait. A landlord who hears nothing and receives nothing on due date cannot afford to. The same principle works in 2026. Call the utility company before the shutoff notice. Call the landlord before the grace period ends. Call the medical billing department before the account goes to collections. Every one of these conversations has more options available than the silence that precedes a crisis.
Everybody skips this one because it sounds too domestic to matter. The numbers say otherwise. Depression families made their own cleaning products. White vinegar cleaned glass and countertops. Baking soda scrubbed sinks, pots, and tile. Lye soap, made from saved cooking grease, washed clothes, floors, and dishes. A full year of homemade cleaning supplies cost less than a single dollar. One bottle of a branded cleaning spray costs $4 today and lasts a month. The chemical formulations are more sophisticated. The cleaning power of vinegar and baking soda has not changed since 1933. What changed was the advertising. Companies spent millions convincing Americans that homemade cleaners were inferior and unsanitary. They were neither. They were simply unprofitable. Vinegar, baking soda, and Castile soap handle 90% of household cleaning needs. The savings across a year are modest individually and meaningful collectively. Small cuts compound. The Depression generation understood this better than any generation since.
Rule 17. This rule built real wealth for families earning almost nothing, and it requires zero financial sophistication to apply immediately. Depression families separated their money physically before it could be spent. Not in a bank with separate accounts, in their hands, in that moment, on payday. The rent money went into one place, the grocery money into another, the savings into a third. Each pile was spoken for before a single optional purchase was considered. The physical separation created a psychological boundary that a unified bank account can never replicate. When the grocery money was in a specific envelope, spending it on something else required a conscious decision to violate a boundary, not just a swipe that moved a number. Modern banking consolidates everything for convenience. That convenience quietly removes the friction that prevents overspending in every category simultaneously. Separate your money the moment it arrives. The categories you choose matter less than the act of separation itself.
This is where things get interesting, because this rule involves doing something that every modern financial product is specifically designed to make you stop doing. Depression families waited, deliberately, patiently, sometimes for months, for the coat, for the appliance, for the car repair that could be delayed one more week, for the furniture that would eventually appear secondhand at a price they could actually afford. Waiting was not deprivation, it was leverage. A family that could genuinely wait had power that an impatient buyer never has. They caught end-of-season sales. They found estate auction prices. They accepted used items at a fraction of new cost without any loss of practical function. Modern retail is an elaborate machine for destroying your ability to wait. Limited-time offers, flash sales, countdown timers, and one-click purchasing all exist to collapse the distance between wanting and buying. Rebuild that distance deliberately. Most things you want today are available cheaper if you wait 30 days.
Rule 19. The library saved more Depression-era futures than any scholarship program, and it is still completely free, still fully stocked, and almost completely ignored. Families who could not afford school books, trade manuals, newspapers, or entertainment discovered that the public library provided all of it at no cost. A man in Cleveland taught himself electrical wiring from library books in 1936 and ran a repair business that supported his family for 30 years. The knowledge was free. The application was priceless. Americans now pay $15 monthly for streaming services, $10 monthly for audiobook subscriptions, and hundreds annually for online courses, all to access content available free at any public library. Your library card unlocks books, audiobooks, films, professional courses, digital magazines, and internet access. Most cards take 5 minutes to obtain. Most people have not used theirs in years. The Depression generation would find that genuinely baffling.
Rule number 3. Save before you spend. Not what is left, before. That single reversal, practiced this week, starts everything else moving. Pick 3 rules from this list and implement them before Friday. Not 10, not all 25. 3. Comment below which 3 you chose. I read every single response, and I will tell you which combination historically produced the fastest results. Subscribe because next week we go inside 1940s rationing strategies that cut household food costs in half. Methods so practical that families used them for decades after rationing ended. Which rule shocked you most? Drop it below right now. The Depression generation survived worse than this. So can you.